Hey guys, how's it going? I just wanted to make a quick video to go over some of the things that I've been hearing in the community recently in relation to comments about one particular whale investor who has been alleged to be involved in shady activities and who many in the community believe is the cause of cell walls and other issues that we've been seeing. I had the opportunity to reach out to this individual and I wanted to go over a little bit of the history of the conversation that I was able to have with him and just provide a little bit of background to the community from his perspective, and then create a meaningful and engaging conversation with the community to try and dispel some of these issues that we have been seeing so far. So as we can see here first, this is my Twitter account. I will be the first to come out and say that I had been openly vocal about my concerns in relation to Benn Godenzi, and based on several videos that I had previously seen and information that I had been presented by others, I had some concerns. So some individuals the other day were commenting on this ongoing issue, referencing specific YouTube videos that have been being made, and some individuals came to this person's defense. I contributed comments based on information that I had previously heard, but that I had not researched myself. An individual responded to this, identifying themselves as Ben, and at first I understandably had my doubts as to who this individual was. Through comments that we had made back and forth, Ben invited me to contact him on Telegram and have a conversation with him about the issues that he has been accused about and some of the issues facing the VeVe and Ecomi community at large. And I wanted to take the opportunity to go over my conversation with him. I think it's important to note that this, of course, is not financial advice from myself or from anything that you may read that Ben provided. He was willing and gracious enough to allow me to share some of his thoughts on specific issues that have been brought forth by the community. And once again, I think it is important to open up a meaningful dialogue to cover some of these issues so that we can dispel any potential fear, uncertainty, and doubt that we are seeing in the community. Because at the end of the day, as investors, I would hope that we all want to see this community succeed. Over here, we can see the beginning of my conversation with Ben. As you can see, I've had no previous interaction with him. We had never spoken. We are not friends. The beginning of the conversation starts out with generic introductions to one another, breaking the ice, getting to know each other a little bit more. And as I go through this, I will be doing a lot of reading of what you can already see on screen, but I would also like to take the opportunity to elaborate on some of the things that were discussed and give my interpretation of the explanations that either him or myself are providing. And then, of course, I'd like to hear from all of you and see what everyone thinks about this issue. Ben starts off by saying, lots of false claims flying around at the moment, mostly coming from Poorman and Cavell that I've seen. I don't follow much. Problem is, even though all their claims make zero sense and have zero fact or evidence, they surprisingly have quite a few people believing it. I personally couldn't care what they says about me, but he thinks attacking me is good for Ecomi when in reality it's actually bad for the project. End of the day, we had a dispute and moved on. I invested my own funds and want the project to succeed more than anyone. Personality differences are irrelevant as we all want the same outcome. I, of course, came into this conversation skeptical, and you will see me make several points that I'm sure many in the community are thinking surrounding Ben. I'm going to be honest, I came into this conversation as a naysayer. I'm not going to say that I came out as a believer, but I also would like to give Ben the credit that he deserves for taking the opportunity to speak with me a relative nobody in the community, and sharing his thoughts for me for over an hour last night and as well today. I say I'm glad to hear you say that. I'll be honest with you, as I have been with everyone else from the start. I have a significant amount of money invested in the project, currently sitting on approximately 14 million OMI, and I have hopes that in the years to come it will act as a vessel to create generational wealth for me and my family. I am not online to make friends, and I only want what's best for my investment and what is going to make me the most money. So I am sure you can imagine that when I see these continued claims surrounding your involvement in this project, as well as other projects, it concerns me, and I think everyone deserves to be heard out and give their side. So I want to reiterate that I appreciate you taking the time to clarify facts and provide your take on the situation. This next part gets a little jumbled because we're responding to each other's questions, but we'll do our best to weed it out and go through it all together. Ben says, understandable, but just a little research clearly shows none of it is backed by fact. No one has ever backed the slander with facts. I incubated Ecomi for 2.5 years with my whole team and was the lead investor in tokens and equity. As for the other projects you may hear about, 99% of that is false or twisted information. Now, this was the first part that got me a little bit worried. Obviously, it's good to see that he had the involvement in the community, but him being the lead investor in tokens and equity, my alarm bells started to ring, because that sounds like the perfect opportunity to commit a pump and dump. With that being said, we continue on. I responded, I imagine that they have a solid team looking over all of the fundamentals as it pertains to tokenomics, and as the move to immutable occurs and we begin to see token utility added, and hopefully everyone invested in the project is happy with what is rolled out. At the end of the day, I could care less about all of the other projects. Call me selfish, but I did my DD on this company, and as with many others, I am all in on the concept of NFTs, and I am sure we can both agree that if done correctly, VeVe will be the king, and I share my sentiment that top 10 is not out of the question. Top 10 is just in relation to the comment that he made here on the side. Try to get a little bit more information from Ben in relation to his involvement with Ecomi as it pertained to the tokenomics. And then, of course, one of the main questions that everyone has been speculating on, what led him to parting ways with the company? He included this history that he's had with several different projects. This has been shared online previously, and other YouTubers have covered this, so I'm not going to go through the entire project history. I will add the disclaimer that I did not do any background research on any of these companies to verify any of the numbers that he's provided. But if anyone feels the need to fact check and would like to come back, you can of course let me know. Ben goes on to say that you'll find every single person that actually knows me personally can vouch for who I am. The only FUD comes from anonymous, anons, or people that have no idea who I am. You see people like Poor Man posting charts, for example, as it went down in price, and they don't realize is I worked with that project from October to late December, early January, then moved to the next venture. Take a look at the charts in this period. Plus, it wasn't just these projects that went down. The entire market went down proportionately. It was a bear market, and it went down for all of us. ETH went down nearly 95%. That's markets, and we have to accept it. It is all part of crypto, which we knew the risks when entering. Once again, I haven't done any research on any of the projects that he was invested in, but this does make sense to me. We've experienced a lot of volatility investing in Ecomi. I myself got in the first week of April, slightly after the all-time highs that we had hit in March, but since then, I would say my investment has probably gone down anywhere between 60 to 70%. As someone that has 14 million tokens, many of which were bought prior to the dip that we're seeing now, I'm definitely quite a bit in the hole. So I can relate to what he is saying here, and I could see from his perspective that this has some merit. I go on to say, as the tokenomics have not been added to the token yet, what was your version of how it should be implemented that you believe will allow it to be successful? We don't have Ecomi's version as of yet, but I am curious as to why so many people were concerned about the way you were alleged to have set it up and how it could create a rug pull. Now, this is obviously something that the community has been focused on quite a bit. And I know some other YouTubers have made videos alleging that the tokenomics were created in such a way that would create a rug pull. We will get to his explanation shortly. And I have to say, for what it's worth, it did make a lot of sense to me, but I would like you to listen to it objectively and, of course, come up with your own opinions. Ben digresses for a moment and speaks briefly on his history related to Ecomi, which I do think is important, so we'll touch on it quickly. He indicates that before joining Ecomi in September of 2018 as the lead advisor, Ecomi was supposed to be 5 verticals, which we do know based on the previous white paper. They weren't able to raise the money in the 2017-2018 bull market, which we also know based on AMAs with Reese, and my team agreed to join only if they removed everything apart from the collectible NFTs and the wallet as it was already done. Now this, of course, is the version of Ecomi that we see now, the VeVe app and the secure wallet. Whether or not anything else was removed for whatever reason, I don't know that any of us will ever be able to verify, but this is all making sense so far. The key factor was Alfred Kahn and the brands that he could bring. That combined with a good token model is what got the equity and token raise completed mainly through my network and for the project to get to market. Once they agreed to remove those other elements and focus only on NFTs, my team designed the entire token ecosystem from scratch based on some criteria and restrictions from Ecomi. We only found out of some new restrictions in late 2020 that the team had not made us aware of, as an example, the money transmitter license. I offered them an MTL pathway in early 2019, but they said it wasn't needed at the time. So from September 2018 to mid-2020, we fully incubated and brought the project to market, including self-funding the big marketing push in February this year that got the exposure and token moving. I also self-funded several other elements for the project along the way to help set up for marketing campaigns and go-to-market strategy, as well as paying some third parties out of my own pocket as they had not been paid, and for me, integrity and relationships are very important. It was better that I compensated these people over damaging relationships. Our contract payment was delayed for about a year. We were often told we would be paid soon, tomorrow, or next week. Eventually, I told him I would have to take legal action if I wasn't paid. There was never any dispute as to the contract being due. It simply never got paid. Eventually, I had no choice but to start the legal action so the company could be paid what was owed. And that's what happened. The dispute was then settled, and we parted ways amicably. Specific details of the settlement cannot be discussed, but I am willing to do a joint press release with Ecomi to clarify FUD if they are also willing to do the same. I always remain available to help the token grow, and am still available now. Doing it right by the original design is critical to maximize value. Yes, tweaks are needed as a company grows, and I am available anytime for this along with multiple other experts in my network that are willing to assist and review updates. Now, before we go on, I think that there's definitely some important takeaways from this. Ben has offered to make a joint statement with Ecomi. And bear in mind that I had requested in this conversation whether he would be willing for me to make these comments public, and he said that he would be okay with it. Understandably, there is a chance that this information would get out, and Ecomi could then make a comment to go against something that Ben is saying. So for him to make this offer, yes, it could be a bluff, but I think on the balance of probabilities, there is some truth to this. I think at the end of the day, what it sounds like is the articles that we've seen online indicate that there was a $3.2 million lawsuit, but we would have to do some additional research on how the suit was settled because there was a settlement. And just because someone is sued for a specific price does not mean that that is the amount of money that they received, nor does it specify how they were compensated. We don't know if he received OMI, we don't know if it was paid out in USD, but we do know from both parties that there was an issue, that they did split, and Ben is saying that from his perspective, it was amicable, and to this day, he is still willing to work with the company to see it succeed. I say that makes perfect sense to me, and is a side of the story that I have not heard told previously. I am glad to hear that you were able to part ways with the company amicably. What was the original design that you had curated for the token model, and do you have any inkling as to whether or not you believe the company would be adhering to the model? I think this is the point that's important to drive home, is we still want to understand what is Benn's side of the story to the tokenomic model that he proposed to Ecomi, and why is it that so many people in the community believe that this would facilitate a rug pull? Benn says that's just stupidity. The reason the project was funded was because I joined into the token. It's literally the best token utility anyone I know has ever seen, and they are all veterans. Why would I design a rug pull or a pump and dump when I'm a large investor and so is my network? Playing devil's advocate, I think that you could be benefiting as a pump and dump for obvious reasons. If you got in early, if you designed it and had a bunch of the tokens and you could rug on other people, you could stand to make a lot of money. With that being said, he goes on to say, I also have long-term vesting on my contract, so it's in my interests for the project to succeed. My interests are aligned as I'm an investor. I invest my own funds in all projects I advise because I back my work. I am aligned with everyone, the team, and all other investors, including my friends and family. Let's circle back to this one comment that he makes here. I also have long-term vesting on my contract, so it's in my interests for the project to succeed. Why is that important to us as a community? Well, for the same reason that we keep hearing issues surrounding FUD with the founder unlocked tokens, it is quite possible that as he was on the original advising board, some of these tokens that are being unlocked could be his. So it would stand to reason that if his tokens are still partially locked up, similarly to Ecomi, if he understands where the project is going, it makes little sense for him to rug the project. Now, conversely, I understand that people could make the argument that he could still be promoting FUD in the community to keep the prices low, to load up on his bags, and we'll get to that eventually. He goes on to say, the people making these statements are just morons that have no clue how a token works. If you look at the videos from people like Poorman and Cavell, they literally have no clue how a token model works, no idea of the thousands of hours of math and formulas that go into the creation of true utility. I just want to stop for a second. I'm obviously going to be posting this video online, and I do anticipate both Poorman and Cavell reacting to this. Poorman, me and you share a birthday. Cavell, you're probably my favorite YouTuber in the community. I love all the hype and everything that you put out for the community. This isn't meant to be a personal issue. Let's just get through it, okay? He continues. Did you see Poorman's recent video about $50 OMI? Do you know that would make OMI larger than the world's top 100 companies combined? That's about a $35 trillion market cap, also equal to the total GDP of the USA and China combined. And Cavell's claims of $10 OMI, that's about 10x the size of Bitcoin market cap, $7 trillion, and more than 3x Apple's market cap, the world's largest company at $2.1 trillion. These guys are straight up two of the dumbest people I've seen. Okay, I'm not going to bother reading this anymore. Obviously, everyone has their own personal opinion on people. Let's go down to something that is more important. Let's start here. There is a Medium article that shows most of the original metrics, but the big one is the master collector program we designed. I'm confident that alone would bring 50 million plus in buy, lock, and burn pressure within weeks. Utilizing a token by locking it in return for access or using it to buy master collector stays is literally the opposite of a rug or pump and dump. By design, it mathematically creates the complete opposite and adds massive true value. 50 million in this model, which he believes is very conservative, on this should get the market cap to $2 billion, plus with tokens burned through utility or staked with utility. If you understand token models, you will see that this is the definition of true utility and drastically reduces circulating supply while increasing buy pressure. That's the opposite of a pump and dump or rug. I have my opinions on this, but he does reference it again further down, so we'll touch on it a little bit more, but we are going to start to get to the meat and potatoes of this. I asked him if he could find the original article that he produced, and we have seen this previously with a few YouTubers' videos, but I think it's important to outline briefly his example, specifically as it would pertain to OMI getting burned or staked. So as an example here, he says top level for the master collector would be master collector 10. It would cost 10,000 USD in OMI or $50,000 OMI staked. What he means by $10,000 of OMI, you would log into the app once the MTL is available and you can buy OMI directly on the app. You would purchase $10,000 worth of the OMI token. At that point, it's like paying an entrance fee to get into somewhere. You don't get that money back. It's gone. That amount of money is converted directly into OMI, and that is directly burned and taken out of the circulating supply. Conversely, if you have 50,000 US dollars worth of OMI, you could stake that OMI over a specific period of time, and that would temporarily give you access to this master collector level. Now, in this example, when you burn the 10,000 worth of OMI, you would always have the master collector on your account. Whereas the 50,000 that you're staking, that would give you access to these features and rewards while you were staked. But if you were to remove those from the staking pool, you would no longer have access to the master collector bonuses. Purchase master collector status burns OMI from the circulating supply. Adding various activities such as collections owned or activity to also move up levels, this allows collectors to be rewarded as well as OMI holders. Some benefits might include drops starting at 8 a.m. for master collector 10 and then down. This would solve many issues, especially with drops, and gives priority to OMI being used for utility, and of course mass buy pressure with no risk to company books. In fact, the company would become much more profitable with this model, while investors also get rewarded. This alone would probably bring 50 million plus in buy and burn pressure within weeks, and could easily take the project top 10 in a reasonable short period of time. He's talking top 10 of all crypto projects. It also prevents dumping through utility, burns, and locks, while reducing the supply drastically. To get 50 million buy pressure with burns, it would only require 5,000 people to buy Master Collector 10, and that's a fraction of the users. Then add staking and all the other Master Collector levels, and the potential is there for hundreds of millions of dollars in buy and burn, creating one of the most used tokens ever seen. I go on to say, thanks for looking for the Master Collector program you designed. Definitely think it will shed some light on your vision and tie it all together. I do understand where you're coming from as it pertains to tokenomics and how locking liquidity does not facilitate or encourage a rug pull. Several crypto projects or exchanges utilize token staking as a part of their tokenomics, and I think a perfect example is a project like ADA, where over 70% of the token is staked, and without a current use case or working model, their token has been incredibly successful. I do anticipate that the utility of staking your OMI during the Master Collector program will, 1, reduce the circulating supply, 2, onboard non-native crypto users who have been using the VeVe app, and 3, increase the interest and profitability of the token. If I'm being honest, I think the biggest concern people have with the model is no one really knows where you sit in terms of how much OMI you are holding. And people are concerned that if they lock up their relatively small amount compared to you and other whales, that once the price increases, you will sell off all of your amounts as large profits, leading people to be holding nothing. And of course, I say not necessarily my opinion, just what I'm observing. Now, I think that if you're going to take anything away from this entire video, what Ben says next should provide a lot of perspective. And I will say that for me, it was a light bulb moment. And I will be curious to hear what you guys have to say about it afterwards. He goes on to say, there will always be whales, be it me or anyone else, same as ADA and every other project. But if the token model is done right, it incentivizes them to hold longer, and smart whales don't want to dump the price, especially if there is a model that will keep the value growing. In its current format, the token has zero utility. That's a much bigger reason for people to propel to sell. Creating utility, buy pressure, and reduce supply incentives everyone to hold long term and sell less. Sorry guys, I'm just looking for the one point. We will come back up to this. There is one thing that he mentions that I think is really important that ties into the point. Yeah, it's right here. Okay, so touching on the previous thing where we had our concerns about essentially a rug pull or something that he would be able to do in order to take away from the project, he brings up a really good point here. The deflation does decrease as token value rises. This is the same for any deflationary token, but the fluctuating value actually assists the model as buy pressure continues. The burn would be extremely significant from the purchase model, but yes, it would burn less as the price grows. When the price drops, it then burns more again, which creates the balance, reducing the supply more and helping the price go back up. That's the whole idea. Lower price equals bigger burn equals less supply and higher price. It's a win-win model for everyone. So these people worried about a dump when they are locked up don't understand the model. When the token dumps, this model ensures the token supply is reduced more drastically and therefore holds better value to absorb sell pressure and return higher value. The ecosystem literally has thousands of hours of research and math done on it over the years, and many of the smartest people in the space assisted and reviewed it with my team. If done right, it's flawless, and the smartest people out there know it. Now, guys, why is this so important? Why was this the light bulb moment for me? He mentions that the lower price equals bigger burn, which we know. All of us every week are super excited to see when OMI data puts out the information on drop date. How much OMI did we burn? No one is concerned about the price right now. Everyone's concerned about loading up their bags and giving themselves the best opportunity that they can as the project continues to grow. So if the project grows and the OMI price increases, less OMI is then required to put into the master collector program in order to earn rewards. As an example, at 1 cent, I would require 5 million OMI in order to have $50,000 to stake for master collector 10. But when OMI hits 10 cents, I only require 500,000. And then once OMI hits a million, I would only require 50,000. So what offsets and combats that? Because we want to see as many tokens as possible locked up in staking or being burned, because that at the end of the day is what is increasing the price. So what Ben is saying here is that if someone with a lot of tokens was to sell off when the price is higher, yes, your tokens are currently locked up, but everyone is going to be buying that dip because they understand the value, because the token has the utility. People are going to be loading up as many tokens as they can every time we see a fluctuation in price to the downside, because that utility of the token is the biggest selling feature and will be what propels this token to be as successful as it is. So some very interesting things that he mentions here. And I really do think that it's important to have a conversation about this and really understand from his perspective what the intent is behind the project. And right now it's difficult because the token doesn't have utility. So we don't see it. All we see is sell walls or people selling a lot of OMI. And the problem is that right now, the only thing that's encouraging people to invest in Ecomi and the OMI token is FOMO. I mean, there's really no utility. We haven't seen the VeVe-verse. We haven't seen the MTL. We haven't seen the Master Collector. And anything else that they may add that would make the token more attractive. So right now, because we have no utility for the token, this is really the scariest time. Because once you add utility to the token, no one is going to be concerned if it temporarily fluctuates up and down. There are whales in any project, and I do have to say what he said here makes a lot of sense to me. Give me a second, guys. I'm just going to look around and see if there's anything that I think is important for us to cover over here. Ben also mentions one other thing that I think is important. He talks about the importance of obviously not spreading FUD and why he doesn't think it's important, and why he doesn't spread FUD is he doesn't want to suppress his own holdings. He's acknowledged that he is an OMI holder himself. He indicates that he's been in crypto for a decade now, and he says that if he does do it on the books, it's under $1,000. On the book means when you put in an order on an exchange. If he's selling on the exchange, now of course this is his word, and you can choose whether or not you're going to take it at face value. But he's essentially saying that he's never creating a wall that stops upward movement. It's counterproductive to the outcome I would like to see. I would also never sell into the liquidity and lower the prices that lowers my holdings value and doesn't allow for the upward trajectory. What this means is similar to whoever's familiar with Andre Jick when he was made a splash in the community back in the first week of April, around the time that I invested, when he made that video, OMI to the moon, $150,000 invested. He references in his video that he bought it off exchange privately. So for big whales and investors like this, it often makes sense for them to purchase off of one another, off of the exchange, and do their own private deals, rather than buying it on the exchanges, especially with the amount of liquidity that we have right now. When we're only seeing $2 million being exchanged in 24 hours, could you imagine if a whale wanted to buy $1 million worth of OMI or sell $1 million worth of OMI, what that would do to the price temporarily? So I do understand what he's saying here, and I do think that sorry about that, folks. My microphone decided to die on me here. One of the perks of not actually being a streamer and having any experience in this, but I digress. We will continue on. I say to him, you make a lot of sense, and I have to say one of the reasons I invested in the token in the first place was the concept of the tokenomics model with its deflationary nature and the many avenues of utility that would assist in its growth. Was there a specific reason 770 billion was settled on as the number for tokens in circulation? The team has indicated in previous AMAs that they don't need a 50-year supply of tokens. Was the token built on a 50-year model at the time? And as someone who is no longer associated with the project, and of course, not financial advice, where do you see the token going in the next 1, 5, 10 years, assuming that the Master Collector program is rolled out according to your design, as well as the current growth of the platform and the NFT space as a whole? He goes on to say some additional interesting things here that we're going to continue to cover. No, it wasn't built on a 50-year model. There was a few factors. Psychological, as an example, even when we reached $1 billion market cap, the token was 1 cent, which people see as affordable. The token sale was done in Bitcoin, where 1 Satoshi equaled 1 token. And the very large reserve was created to allow for large price fluctuations or purchases during the early days if token price remained low. I think you guys are going to find this very interesting, what we go on to next, so I'll continue. The team was presented with an upgrade to the metrics, which would allow the reserve to be burned almost in full. This model was presented with the MTL issue, and there is a full solution available immediately to the MTL issue, which can still be added anytime. Can we talk about what that would mean, guys? There is 770 billion tokens that currently exist. Now we know that the vast majority of those will never enter the circulating supply. But of course, right now, when the buybacks are being conducted, those buybacks are being taken out of the reserve wallet and put into the vault wallet. So right now, we're taking one out of circulation token and moving it to another out of circulation token. We will need to be able to go through 289 billion tokens worth of buybacks before we start to see an impact on the current circulating supply of the tokens. So why is this such a big deal? If they implement this model that apparently, according to Ben, is available and can be added to them anytime, the reserve would be burned almost in full. We could be talking about 250 billion, or 1/3 of all tokens that will ever exist, could be wiped out. Can you think of an example of a time when something like this may make a lot of sense? The first thing that comes to mind for me is the change of a blockchain. maybe a move to immutable. When Reese says maybe we don't need a 50-year token supply, yes, he's being facetious, but they know that they don't necessarily need the supply of tokens that they have currently, because if the token continues to be successful, the burns will drastically decrease. So if we can remove the vast majority of the tokens in the reserve wallet and then start to have buybacks come out of the circulating supply, every single time a buyback is done, that will impact the value of all of our OMI tokens. Ben continues, at the same time allowing full OMI utility in and out of the app. This solution was agreed to at the time, mid-court case, but after contact stopped, I do not know why it wasn't implemented. So obviously Ben was involved at the time, coming up with solutions to issues that may or may not have come up during the rollout of the product. He obviously isn't directly in touch with them currently, so he doesn't know where they stand on it, but I would imagine that this is still something that they have available to them. He goes on to say, personal opinion, I believe that if this master collector model was rolled out exactly, the market cap should be in the range of $10 billion within 6 to 12 months. Plus the other utilities as per the original and upgraded design, I think this is very realistic. But that is only if done correctly and exactly right. You can't edit token models without a lot of review and experts confirming changes and a whole lot of math and formulas. Something that seems like a small change could undermine the value of the entire model. The above model done exactly like this, and that's where I see it going. If changed, I have no opinion on that potential as I don't see it. Now, this is huge, guys. I don't want to create hype that may or may not be warranted. We, of course, don't know whether anything like this will occur with a move to immutable. All I know for sure is that the person that was responsible for the tokenomics implemented this as a solution to them, and this was big. And then Ben went to bed on me. And you can imagine that after reading all of this, I didn't get a lot of sleep. There was a lot going on in my head. And the first of which was I should be buying a lot more OMI. I didn't. Full disclosure, I'm fully tapped out. But not saying it's a terrible idea, also not financial advice. At the end of our conversation, I said, would you be willing to let me share this with the community? Is there anything in here that you would have concerns about? He said he wanted to go over it just to make sure that everything appeared clear to him. We went over it the next morning. He said that he was fine with it. A couple of the questions that you guys may have come up with, that I came up with, that we'll go over right here at the end, that I responded to him this morning were in relation to the Master Collector program that you designed for the team, do you have any concerns about how the cryptocurrency space has evolved in relation to certain cryptos being classified as securities, i.e. XRP with the SEC lawsuit dropping 90% of its value, and how this would tie into the Master Collector program as it has been designed? Is there anything within the program that you had created that you believe would need to be modified, altered, or removed in order to make it compliant with regulations? / is there anything you would have added knowing what you know now to improve the model even further? Ben says, although I'm not a lawyer, so I can't be 100% sure on legalities, this model is true utility, which 99.9% of the space is missing. In my opinion, it makes it much more compliant. As for the changes, yes, there was barriers I considered back in 2018-2019 that were put to the team as potential roadblocks, but was informed that they weren't an issue. Some of these have now recently come up as barriers, mainly relating to in-app sales and the MTL. Now we know in-app sales have been an issue. Purchasing in USD, regardless of where you live in the world, has caused issues. And then, of course, the App Store fees, which have gutted so many people, which have caused people to move to the secondary market. All of these were worked through late last year with the team, mid-lawsuit, and solutions provided. At that time, they were agreed to, but I do not know where they stand now, as we have very little contact. I don't believe he responded to this, so give me 1 second here. So I gave Ben an opportunity at the end to just share any thoughts that he may have uh, about this entire situation and obviously the accusations that have been made against him, and asked whether or not there was anything he'd like to touch on in relation to this in a public sense. Ben has said, not really. I'm not too fazed by it all. It's just made up out of thin air without any facts to back the claims because they are entirely false. The other point is none of this FUD comes from anyone that actually knows me or has invested with me over the last 4 years. Anyone that actually knows me laughs at all the FUD because they all know how false all of it is. When some of those articles came out a couple of years ago, it was 99% made up and not even close to the truth. Projects I never even spoke to and things like that. At the time, I put out a 10 Bitcoin reward for 6 months if anyone could show proof. Of course, no one even claimed it because it wasn't possible. Hundreds of people have made their first million by knowing me and investing in projects I've worked on. Only one ever went to zero, and that project I left before launch as I didn't agree with the way they were doing it, and I told them it would go to zero if they did it the way they did. That being said, people should be careful when slandering others with false information, as this behavior is against the law and could be taken very seriously. Just going to go through here, guys. I just want to make sure that we cover everything. Ben does say, as for the reserve, as mentioned, an upgraded model was presented and agreed to that solved the MTL issue until it was ready, and also allowed for the vast majority of the reserve to be removed, which is obviously a big thing that I think is important to touch on again. It was advised to be done when doing a token swap, and also strongly advised that the new token should be called VeVe to ensure the link remains between the app and the token. Now, I've seen a couple people on Twitter putting this out as a good idea, and I have to say, I 100% agree with them because onboarding non-native crypto users, I mean, I know Fortnite has V-Bucks and Call of Duty has COD points. They have a specific association to what they're using. And if you're using the VeVe app, to purchase the VeVe coin makes a lot more sense than purchasing the Omi token when no one knows the link between Ecomi and VeVe unless you're, really familiar with crypto and have that understanding. So he does mention it was agreed to at the time as the upgrade made a lot of sense, solving issues with new restrictions. I do not know the current status with this. So he seems to indicate that the move to the new blockchain may come with the reserve being removed and burned because it was agreed upon previously back all the way when he was having conversations with them. So I think he's also referencing renaming the token as well. So this could be very interesting. And I think that this could be a big selling point and, attracting new people to onboarding the token. Of course, Ben goes on to say, hopefully they go ahead with the model, and I have recently reached out to David again to offer assistance with doing this right and ensuring maximum value/impact for investors in the company. Once again, guys, it's going to be up to you whether you decide that what Ben is saying is true or whether it's not. I have always been of the belief that there are three sides to every story. There is one person's side, there is the other person's side, and there is the truth that meets somewhere in the middle. If Ben is saying that he, on multiple occasions, is willing to reach out to Ecomi to put out a joint statement, to assist them with the model, to make sure that the company is successful, I mean, if he's telling the truth about still having a vested interest in having tokens unlocked for his purpose, it makes a lot of sense to me, guys, that he would stand to benefit from the company's success. Now, will he eventually sell off his tokens and make a ridiculous amount of money? I would imagine so. And I will be honest with you, I did ask him in this conversation how many tokens he held, and he chose not to provide that information, which of course is his right. Now, with that being said, does he deserve to sell tokens and make money similarly to David, Dan, and anyone else on the founding team who have worked tirelessly to make this project the success that it will be? I would say that they do. So, with all of that being said, Ben and I wrap up the conversation He reiterates that if anyone would like to put proof out to refute any, of his claims, or can find information that he was involved in projects that were rug pulled, or that he had some form of nefarious intent with, that they could present that. And he also did reference that he would be responding to comments, whether that be in my video, or if Poor Man or Cavell or anyone else in the community wants to react to these things. Now, I will finish off by saying he does not believe that OMI will be $50 or even $10 based on the tokenomics that currently exist and the utility of the token. I did touch on that with him, referencing that I'm sure no one saw 40K Bitcoin 10 years ago either. By 2030, what happens if we had, a 100 billion token circulation supply and a $1 trillion market cap, which, with all the licenses that we know of already, and not to mention all the licenses that, might be onboarding, I don't think that that's necessarily a stretch with the amount of people and mass adoption that the crypto market, and especially the VeVe app, is going to get. Ben goes on to say, with the right token model, he sees $10 billion being realistic within 6 to 12 months. So he's doubling down on that information that he's provided earlier. And then he goes on to say, beyond that, who knows? As the market grows, the potential is huge. That's for sure. So we talk a little bit about the video that Poor Man put out, because of course we've been conversing back and forth. And I do think he mentions that he is going to respond directly to some comments that he saw on Poor Man's video. I will mention one thing that I did see based on the article that Poor Man referenced. He suggests more linear vesting, and he put longer vesting in his contract. So those are all things that are actually anti-rug proof. So if you're reducing the hard cap and extending team vesting, those are actually both good things. Those are things you want to see out of a project. So essentially, reducing the hard cap is essentially reducing the initial coin offering, so the amount of tokens that initial investors can invest into with the project. So if you offer more of those tokens, you're basically permitting more whales to be a part of the project. And then extending team vesting is the equivalent of the Ecomi team locking up their tokens for 2 years and then spreading it out over 12 months. So that's actually a good thing. These things can prevent rug pulls. So I will say, and this is not a knock on Poor Man or any of the information that's been released, but I will say specifically to this, that is something that is actually important and something that you would want to see. I will finish off by saying I do genuinely have some concerns with the amount of FUD that is coming around in the community, not just in relation to Ben, but to a lot of issues surrounding manipulation, whales, etc. It's an unfortunate fact that most people, when they're investing in projects, don't do a ton of their own research, and they do very much focus on social media and information that they're hearing online. So I do say, I will be honest, I do have some concerns about the amount of emphasis that the content creator community is putting on focusing on this issue, because all that it is doing is potentially discouraging new investors from coming into the project when the first, second, or third video that they're seeing is all about whale manipulation, this project not being good to invest in, and that is concerning. So whether it's that we need to get Ben on a live stream so that we can have this conversation, maybe get Hello K involved as kind of a level-headed third party, or someone else who maybe doesn't have a direct impact or influence in some of these most recent videos that have been put out. And once again, not a knock on you, Poor Man, not a knock on you, Cavell. I love both you guys. I do love your content. But at the end of the day, I am an investor, and the goal at the end of the day for me is to see my investment grow. So I think we should really be working together as a community to put out as much positive information together rather than harping on some of the negative traits that exist in any community, which is not making OMI as appealing as I really believe that it deserves to be. I know that this is an extremely long video, guys. I apologize for that. I'm likely going to break it up into two parts because of it, but I did think it was important to get the conversation out that I had with Ben in its entirety. I owed that to him for taking the time to provide me with all of this information. And I'm also going to be putting in the time to respond to all of you. And I would love to hear everyone's input and feedback on some of the things that they are reading and what they saw based on the things that Ben said. So, guys, if you have any opinions on the information that's been put out by Ben, whether it be about the Master Collector program and rewards, staking, OMI utility, the potential move to immutable, and the removal of the reserve wallet, the rename of the VeVe token, or OMI token to VeVe, whatever it may be, I can't wait to hear from you guys. Let's keep it positive, and remember, we're all in this community together, and that red circle bonds us, and we're going to the moon together. Love you guys.